Big Ten win totals are out, courtesy of FanDuel, and boy, do I have some thoughts here. So we did the SEC the other night. That video's on the channel. You know there are 4 teams in the Big Ten with win totals of 8 or higher. Just 4. And it's Ohio State, it's Oregon, it's Michigan, and it's Penn State. There are 7 teams with win totals of 5.5 or lower. That screams secret garbage, a large chunk of it at the bottom of your conference. That doesn't always mean that's how it plays out. So some things that stood out here. There are 12 teams between 7.5 and 5.5. So you got a bunch of Washingtons and Iowas and USCs and Wisconsins. There's just like that huge middle ground there where even odds makers are saying, yeah, I mean, obviously someone's going to emerge from here. Someone's not even going to come close. If you guys think you know better than us, go ahead. So some teams that I think there's going to be an early underlean on. Michigan at 9.5 is a solid underlean. They face 3 of the top 5 teams in the playoff odds. Just pause for effect there. They play Texas, they play Ohio State, and they play Oregon. That's right, folks. Michigan plays Texas at home this upcoming year. Or you could say Texas has to play Michigan in addition to joining the SEC this upcoming year. But anyway, you got a complete program reset. You got a quarterback reset. 9.5 is a very, very lofty number. I think Michigan, early action on the under. Iowa at 7.5, I'd say early action on the under here. Defense does not bring much back for them. Normally, you've gotten yourself into a mode, at least I have, of being able to say, I don't care. Yeah, they'll average 11 points offensively a game, but they can hold a lot of teams to 10 or less. So, they'll win 8 or 9 games. Well, maybe not so much this year. Cade McNamara didn't have good numbers even when healthy last year. They got Iowa State, they got Ohio State, they got Wisconsin. There are no favors done, I guess is the way I would describe Iowa's schedule. Now, unders are not fun to talk about. Overs are a little bit more fun to talk about. Could I interest you? Probably not. I wish I could interest you in a very in-depth discussion about why Rutgers is going to win more than 7.5 or 6.5 games this upcoming year. Maybe 7.5, we'll see. But the total on Rutgers is 6.5. You know who they don't play? Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, or Michigan. Or as you may call them, the top 4 teams in the conference this year. They're top 10 in returning production. Greg Schiano's a good coach. In fact, when we did the segment earlier today, what's the best thing about college football? Someone just said Greg Schiano. No context. Just Greg Schiano, which would be a good Twitter follow. No context, Greg Schiano. They don't have back-to-back road games either. Rutgers is going to win more than 6.5 games. There you go. What are we here for? To make bold predictions in February. What about Penn State? They play Ohio State. Whomst else? Because the over-under is 9.5. It's not 11.5. So they're not going to be favored against Ohio State. But where else are we looking here? Where else are we looking where they're not favored? You're probably looking at Penn State favored in either 10 or 11 games. They've got a trip to Southern Cal on the 12th. Even if you sell me on them not being favored there, they're favored everywhere else. In other words, there's some breathing room. Outside of that Ohio State game, who they get at home, by the way. So I'm not saying that's not a winnable game. They're sitting here upgrading their offensive staff, dare I say. And they've got Drew Aller as a second-year full-time starter now. Again, it's 9.5. It's not 11.5. Let's talk about USC for a second. Since they're a Big Ten team now and all, there are varying opinions on the USC schedule here. They do open with LSU. That's a neutral site game out there in Las Vegas. They've got Notre Dame, as they do every year. So half of their non-conference, or actually, I guess, 2/3 of their non-con is LSU and Notre Dame. And they got Utah State for good measure in week 2. But also, you see that Penn State game, and they go to UCLA the week before they play Notre Dame. There is no Ohio State there, but they do have games at Michigan, and they got a game against Penn State. I think, though, as tough as that is on paper, I look at the 2 road games at Michigan and at Washington. There's no better time to catch them. It's never going to be easy to go play them. But don't you want to catch both of them in total or overhaul years or reset years in terms of coaching staff? Isn't that when you want to play them? So anyway, we got in an argument the other day on the show about where USC fits in the new Big Ten. I said they're a Tier 3 program, which just meant I think they're the 5th or 6th best one in the Big Ten. And a lot of you disagreed with me from the USC side. So my whole point was, well, obviously one of us is going to be right. But the good news is, if I'm the one who's wrong, this schedule will be your biggest point of ammunition. Because if I'm wrong, and if they're entering as a Tier 1 or Tier 2 Big Ten program, they'll be in the Big Ten championship game. Because this schedule should allow them, if they are that lofty, to be in the Big Ten championship game. UCLA, just briefly, they got 6 road games. There's a 3-week stretch here where they go to LSU, and then they got Oregon at home, and then they go to Penn State. You might as well cue the Undertaker's music there. And they're resetting in their own right out there. Don't feel particularly great about their prospects this year. Washington got Jed Fish in, and not a lot else looks like it did last year on the roster either. They're mid-season. You look at that chunk of at Rutgers, and remember, that's flying from Seattle to Piscataway, New Jersey. They go at Rutgers and then Michigan. At Iowa, at Indiana, USC, at Penn State, UCLA, at Oregon. Blah. So I didn't put them in the automatic lean towards under, but that's one where we just got to check back middle of the year and see what they are. I have no clue. How could anyone have a clue what to expect from Washington this year? So that's a look at some Big Ten win totals. Every team playing 9 conference games. That's just an early look. You can bet any of those you want to right now if you are so inclined over at FanDuel.